There's a specific kind of exhaustion that sleep can't fix. You take time off. You cancel plans, you rest, and yet the tiredness remains. It's not your body that's worn down, it's your boundaries. You're not tired because you've done too much. You're tired because you've given too much to people, to conversations, to roles that don't return anything back. You've been emotionally available to the point of depletion. And most of the time, you don't even realize it, because being available is how you've survived. It's how you felt useful, worthy, safe. Jung would say this isn't exhaustion. This is a soul that's been spread too thin across too many people, for too long, in ways that no longer align with who you are, but you've been conditioned to equate presence with love. That being there for everyone all the time makes you a good person. That saying yes without question is selfless. That answering every message, engaging every crisis, and absorbing everyone else's emotions is what makes you strong. But strength without boundaries is self-erasure. Jung understood this better than anyone. He taught that individuation, becoming whole, requires separation, space, a withdrawal from the false self and all the performances attached to it. And nothing keeps the false self alive longer than chronic availability. Because when you're always accessible to others, you become increasingly inaccessible to yourself. Let that land. When your energy is constantly being pulled outward, you lose the ability to hear your own inner voice. Your intuition gets drowned out by obligation. Your self-trust gets replaced by other people's expectations. You start living for others, and slowly, you disappear from your own life. And the scariest part? You get rewarded for it. They'll call you reliable, empathetic, strong. But what they're really saying is, you don't inconvenience us. And in the quiet moments, when there's no one left to please, that's when it hits you. That tiredness in your bones, that fog in your mind, that deep ache that says, I don't even know who I am when I'm not giving. This is the crisis of the over-available. You become a mirror for everyone else's needs, while your own reflection fades. And eventually, the cost is your aliveness. Jung believed that every human being must face this turning point, the moment when the pain of being overly available becomes greater than the fear of being misunderstood. Because saying I can't when you always said yes, that will confuse people. Saying not today when you used to drop everything, that will trigger guilt. Saying this doesn't feel right anymore when it used to be your role, that might even end relationships. But Jung's work wasn't about people-pleasing. It was about integrity, wholeness, the alignment of the inner world and the outer world, even if that alignment cost you comfort. He believed that the self doesn't fully emerge until you stop playing the role of caretaker to everyone else's chaos. And that includes letting go of the subtle ways you've made yourself too available to the wrong people, to outdated versions of yourself, and to dynamics that no longer serve your evolution. Here's what no one tells you: your energy is sacred. It's not infinite. And the more you pour it into people who can't hold it, the less of it you have for your own expansion. You're not selfish for pulling back. You're not cold for protecting your peace. You're not cruel for choosing yourself after years of choosing everyone else. You're becoming conscious. You're becoming sovereign. You're finally seeing that availability without discernment isn't compassion, it's codependency dressed up as kindness. This is what Jung meant when he said, the most terrifying thing is to accept oneself completely, because accepting yourself fully also means being willing to disappoint others, to step out of the savior role, to stop over-explaining your boundaries, to stop trying to be understood by people committed to misunderstanding you. And that's terrifying, because the moment you stop being available in the ways you used to be, everything changes. Some relationships fade, some expectations crumble, but what remains is yours. And that's the beginning of real inner power. If this content is making sense to you, then click the subscribe button and subscribe to the channel. Thank you for your support. Why they're drawn to you and keep taking from you. People don't just take from you at random. They take from you because they can. Because somewhere along the way, you taught them, consciously or not, that your energy is always available. Your time is flexible. Your emotional bandwidth is open-ended. You became a reliable supply of validation, of support, of silence. And they keep coming back, not because they value your depth, but because they're used to the convenience of your presence. Jung would call this a projection dynamic. People project onto you what they want to see: the strong one, the healer, the one who never says no. But the deeper truth is, they're drawn to your availability because it makes their life easier, not because it makes you whole. You think they love your kindness. What they really love is your compliance. You think they admire your loyalty. What they really rely on is your unwillingness to walk away. And so the pattern continues: you give, they take. You adjust, they demand more. You stay quiet to keep the peace, and they mistake your silence for agreement, but none of it nourishes you. None of it reflects your worth. It only deepens the gap between who you are and who you're performing to be. Jung believed that people stuck in this loop eventually face a psychic rupture, a moment where the unconscious self, the one you've buried under, your constant yes finally screams loud enough to break the pattern. That scream might sound like burnout. It might sound like resentment. It might come in the form of sudden emotional distance or a complete internal shutdown. But make no mistake, it's not weakness. It's your deeper self saying, I can't carry this anymore. You see, the reason they keep taking isn't just about them. It's about the energetic contract you keep signing, the one that says, they'll keep showing up for you even if it costs me my peace. And that contract is often rooted in early life, in childhood experiences where love felt conditional, where being helpful meant being safe, where your worth was measured by how much you could minimize your own needs. So now as an adult, you repeat that pattern, not because you want to, but because it's familiar. Familiarity feels safe, even when it's harmful. And until you become conscious of it, you'll keep offering your soul on a silver platter to people who don't even realize they're eating it. This is why Jung emphasized shadow work, because the shadow isn't just your rage, your fear, your shame, it's also your unconscious conditioning. The reflex to prioritize others, the compulsion to avoid conflict, the inability to sit with guilt after saying no. These are not just personality traits. They're survival mechanisms. And as long as they stay unconscious, they run your life. They dictate your energy. They shape your relationships. They keep you available to people who only love the mask. But here's the turning point: the moment you see it, you can choose something different. You can say no more. Not with anger, but with clarity. You can reclaim your energy from the places it was leaking. You can stop justifying your boundaries and start enforcing them silently. You can stop begging to be seen and start seeing yourself. And the people who were only there for your availability, they'll fall away. Let them. Because what's falling away isn't love, it's the illusion that your worth depends on being useful. The more you center your energy, the more magnetic you become, not to takers, but to people who recognize your boundaries as a sign of self-respect. And that's the paradox: when you stop being universally available, you start becoming truly seen. Because people can't respect what you don't protect. And when you protect your energy, you stop attracting situations that drain it. Jung believed that individuation requires this exact kind of rupture: the death of the false self, the rejection of roles that no longer serve, and the birth of a soul that knows its value without needing it confirmed. So ask yourself honestly, where are you still giving out of fear? Who are you staying accessible to out of guilt? What parts of your life are still running on old emotional contracts that you never actually signed with your soul? Because every time you say yes from a place of fear, you deepen your own disconnection. And every time you say no from a place of clarity, you return to yourself. You don't have to explain your shift. You don't have to announce your boundaries. You just stop showing up the way you used to. Let them adjust, or let them leave. Either way, you're free. The guilt illusion. Why you feel bad for doing what's healthy. The moment you start pulling back even gently, the guilt kicks in. You decline an invite and instantly feel selfish. You say no to a favor and feel like a bad friend. You don't respond right away. And suddenly you're overthinking, wondering if you hurt someone. This guilt isn't logical. It's emotional conditioning. It's the residue of a life where your role was tied to how available you were for others. And now that you're doing something healthy, choosing yourself, your nervous system misreads it as danger. Carl Jung would say that this is your shadow speaking, not the dark, destructive part, the neglected part, the part of you that still believes love must be earned by sacrifice. You've been taught that love looks like self-abandonment, that real care means being uncomfortable, that good people stretch themselves thin for the benefit of others. And so when you finally set a boundary, it doesn't feel empowering at first. It feels wrong. Not because it is, but because it breaks the rules you internalized from years of overgiving. Guilt is the echo of that internalized rulebook. And it doesn't show up to stop you from doing bad things. It shows up to keep you small, to keep you in the role, to keep you manageable. Because the moment you start acting from wholeness, not obligation, you become unpredictable. You become free. Jung wrote that the unconscious resists change, not because it's evil, but because it believes the old way kept you safe. So when you start shifting, becoming less available, more discerning, more self-directed, the psyche triggers guilt as a form of self-protection. It's a test, a checkpoint, and the only way through is awareness. You have to feel the guilt and not obey it. You have to feel the internal tremble and say, I know this discomfort, and I'm choosing truth anyway. You have to sit in the unfamiliar silence that follows your boundary and realize you didn't die. The world didn't end. The right people didn't leave. You see, guilt is loud at first, but it has no spine. If you stop reacting to it, it dissolves, slowly, gradually, and in its place something stronger emerges: self-respect. The ability to hear your own yes and no without second-guessing. The courage to follow your energy, not their expectations. And over time, that becomes your new normal, your new safety. And that's when you'll notice something miraculous. The very things you thought would fall apart without your constant availability start surviving just fine. People adjust, systems adapt, or they fade out of your life, revealing they were never truly connected to you in the first place. Jung believed that one of the greatest barriers to individuation is unconscious guilt. The guilt of growing, of changing, of healing past the people who knew the older version of you. Because as you evolve, your relationships will get uncomfortable. You'll outgrow dynamics you once depended on. You'll stop being the one who always answers, always fixes, always bends. And people will notice. Some will admire it. Others will resist. But your job is no longer to be liked. It's to be true. Let's be real, you don't feel guilty because you did something wrong. You feel guilty because you did something new. You moved in a way that prioritizes your peace over their perception. And if your nervous system is still wired for survival, that shift will trigger an alarm. But guess what? That alarm is old, it's outdated. It was installed when your worth was linked to how useful you were. You don't live there anymore. You can update your internal system. You can sit with guilt without letting it govern your choices. You can retrain your body to feel safe, even when others are disappointed. Because if guilt is the price of liberation, it's worth it. And eventually that guilt will turn into gratitude. Gratitude that you protected your energy. Gratitude that you stopped negotiating your worth. Gratitude that you're finally living in a way that aligns with your truth, not your training. So next time the guilt shows up, smile at it. Recognize it as a ghost, a shadow, an echo from a time when you had to earn your place. And then act anyway. Protect your peace anyway. Honor your no anyway. Because guilt doesn't mean you're wrong. It often means you're finally doing what's right. What happens the moment you reclaim your energy, and who disappears when you do? Something strange happens when you stop being constantly available. The people who depended on your over-functioning disappear. The people who loved you most when you said yes every time grow distant. The ones who praised your generosity go silent when your boundaries enter the room. And it hurts. Not because you want them back, but because part of you hoped they'd stay for the real you, not just the role you played. Carl Jung believed this loss was necessary, that the moment you reclaim your energy, anything that was built on imbalance, emotional, psychological, spiritual, starts to collapse, not to punish you, but to free you, because energy is currency. And the moment you stop leaking it into relationships that don't return anything, your life reorganizes itself. Your schedule clears, your mental fog lifts, your body feels lighter. Not because everything's perfect, but because you're no longer carrying what was never yours. And yet, even in that lightness, grief will rise. Grief for the version of you who thought being needed was the same as being loved. Grief for the friendships that fade when you stop chasing. Grief for the identities that crumble when you stop managing everyone else's emotions. That grief isn't weakness, it's detox. It's the release of roles that kept you safe but small. Jung knew that individuation, the path to true selfhood, required aloneness. Not isolation, but solitude. A stretch of life where you no longer measure your worth by how often your phone buzzes. A phase where your calendar is no longer packed, but your soul is finally full. This is the sacred gap, the pause between the overextended you and the whole you. And yes, it can feel lonely. But that loneliness is not emptiness. It's clearing. It's space being made for something more aligned, something more reciprocal, something that doesn't drain you to exist in it. And then quietly, something else begins to happen. You stop craving attention. You stop obsessing over replies. You stop feeling obligated to show up for dynamics that no longer nourish you. You start realizing your peace is not worth sacrificing for someone else's convenience. And the ones who truly value your presence, they don't disappear, they adjust. They rise to meet you. They ask instead of assume. They appreciate instead of expect. Because now, you're not giving from depletion, you're giving from choice. And that changes everything. But let's be honest, not everyone will understand the shift. Some will call you distant, cold, selfish, not because you are, but because your clarity threatens their comfort. You were their mirror, their source, their emotional caretaker. And now that you've stepped back, they have to face their own imbalance, their own expectations, their own emptiness. And many people aren't ready for that. They'll say you've changed, and you have. You've stopped abandoning yourself. You've stopped bleeding for people who treat your compassion like an open tab. You've stopped being the emotional safety net for everyone else's chaos. And what's left when you do? You. Your time, your attention, your creativity, your intuition. All the parts of you that were previously outsourced come home. And now you get to choose where they go, who they're shared with, what they're poured into. And as that happens, you'll start to notice something else. Your magnetism grows. Not because you're performing, but because authenticity is magnetic. When you're no longer drained by over-availability, your energy speaks louder than any words. You walk differently. You speak differently. You no longer beg to be understood, you simply exist in truth. Jung believed that this phase of energy reclamation is what gives birth to the fully integrated self. Not just a better version of the persona, but a self who is deeply rooted, selective, at peace with solitude, and fearless about letting go. Because once you know what it feels like to have your energy back, really, back, you'll never again give it away to things that make your soul shrink. The end of the role and the beginning of the real you. There comes a moment when you stop playing the role. Not because you're angry, not because you need revenge, but because something inside you says, I'm done. Done being the one who always shows up while no one checks in on you. Done being the one who smooths things over while swallowing your truth. Done being emotionally accessible to people who don't even ask how you're doing. Carl Jung called this threshold the point of individuation, when the soul chooses itself over the mask. It doesn't come with fanfare, it often comes in silence, in a soft no where you used to say yes, in a boundary you don't explain, in a quiet exit from places you've outgrown. This isn't rebellion. This is realignment. This is what happens when your nervous system finally catches up to your soul and says, we don't live like that anymore. And on the surface, it may look like you're withdrawing, but on a deeper level, you're arriving. For the first time in a long time, your energy belongs to you. Not to the performance, not to the projection, not to the people who only know how to take. You're not being dramatic. You're being direct. And the people who truly care won't call you distant. They'll call you clear. Because when you stop being constantly available, you stop being misused. You stop being overlooked. You stop being mistaken for someone who doesn't have needs, limits, edges. And in that clarity, you meet a version of yourself who was never allowed to speak before. The one who knows how to rest without guilt. The one who creates without asking for permission. The one who shows up in relationships without self-erasing. That version isn't new. That version is you, finally unedited. Jung believed that healing wasn't about becoming better, it was about becoming more whole, more honest, more sovereign, and yes, more unavailable to anything that chips away at your dignity. Because once you reach this place, you stop explaining your evolution. You realize if they need the old version of you to feel okay, they were never really with you in the first place. So let them go, let the role dissolve, let the story change. Because you don't need to be constantly accessible to be deeply loved. You don't need to be everything for everyone to be worthy. You just need to be true. And the people who meet you in that truth, that's the real connection you've been craving all along. But if you really want to protect your energy, you have to know what and who to protect it from. In the next video, we explore the shadow psychology of human behavior and Carl Jung's most profound warnings about the types of people who can quietly destroy your peace. 6 types of people Carl Jung warned us about. If you've ever felt drained after spending time with someone, this will show you exactly why and what to do about it. We'll see you there. Depthoria continues.